probably agree on.
Yeah, the playoff team for sure.
So do you.
I mean, I tell you what, I don't think there was a more accurate state. And
if they struggle again, I mean, I don't think there's any way you can keep Alex Critch, but
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast, live on CBS Sports Network, here at Big Ten Media Days. And Bud, you are a champion of the summer of the Cover 3 podcast. Anybody in the tailgate knows that. And if you're not subscribed, then please do subscribe to the Cover 3 podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. But summer school is such an important part of our programming in the summer. So, Bud, I got to ask, we've got a guest here. Why don't you introduce us to Mr. Webb?
Michigan fans on Twitter, I told you we'd have a surprise. Sam Webb, the Michigan Insider, he is back. And we don't usually do summer school live because I like to edit that thing down, but my man Sam's he's been the goods on Michigan the last 3 years, like the most accurate guy out there. Let's do it live, man. Let's do a summer school.
Let's go.
All right, so Cerrone is taking over. Jim Harbaugh off to the NFL. Obviously, like if you listen to him talk on the podium, he says a lot of the same phrases that his mentor Harbaugh said. How will he want to run this program differently?
You know, I don't think he's going to reinvent the wheel. I think if he learned anything, I think it's that when you are in the fire, you got to adapt. I think that when you get in the Penn State game, I think there was a lesson to be learned that he applied later in the season. They got in that game, Bud, and they couldn't block those guys. Mm-hmm. And so when you can't block them, you got a plan. You remember that saying Mike Tyson had, everyone has a plan until you get hit? Mm-hmm. And he realized in that moment the plan they had going into that game wasn't going to work. And so there were some tools that they unveiled in that game on the fly that you go to the championship or the Rose Bowl game against Alabama that he pulled out again, that they needed in the crunch time to win the game. And so I think you'll see him employ the same sort of strategies this year where they got a plan heading into the season who they think he didn't say who he thinks his quarterback is going to be, but I think in their mind they think who their quarterback is going to be. But if they get in the season and it's not like that, I think they are going to adapt and be able to have a game plan that works.
In their mind, starting now, is that Guy Orji?
I think so. Listen, he has difference-making talent, difference-making athleticism. Now, does that translate to difference-making play? I don't know. It's very much like Jalen Milroe. Mm-hmm. You know, you get into the season last year at Alabama, and they get in the game too much like Michigan against Texas, and he was making mistakes that they couldn't live with in the moment, and they benched him. Now, that didn't wreck their season because he had the mental makeup to not be wrecked by that. Michigan needs to make a decision. If it winds up being Alex Orji, does he have mistakes that they can live with, that they can coach him through? Because if you bench him, you could wreck him, and then now he can't recover, and maybe you don't have the same kind of season that Alabama had. That's something they're going to have to get right with as a coaching staff.
So the only thing we see is what they use Orji on TV, which is just a wildcat, which makes sense. Like if you got a guy to throw the passes, the guy that went like 5th overall to the Vikings would make some sense. Let McCarthy throw him. But what did you hear behind the scenes about Orji's passing ability?
So he knows the offense. Let's just start there. It is not about aptitude. It is not about IQ. It is not about knowing where to go with the football. He can process defenses. He can read them on the fly. It is all about mechanics. It is all about process. He didn't have the quarterback tutelage that a lot of other guys had coming in. So they have had to do that from the ground up. That is what Kirk Campbell is about. This is what he does, right?
It's like
so
his passion
being
project.
put to the table, being put on the table. So we'll see if he's able to grow him up. This season is not a runway. It's a aircraft carrier. Your game 2 against Texas. Can you grow him up fast enough in those mechanics so he can execute the short and intermediate game consistently enough where his running skills really come to the fore? Because if you look at them offensively, what they'll tell you is they aren't going to bring out a new offensive package. They're going to emphasize different aspects of the offensive game plan that they already had, that they didn't run as much with JJ. You saw it in flashes. You're going to see it in waves with Alex Orji if he winds up being a quarterback.
You mentioned it earlier that Cerrone learned the lessons from that Penn State game because they couldn't block. There's an entirely new offensive line on this team in 2024. What are you hearing? What have you seen about how that unit is gelling going into the season? Yeah,
so they're a unit that has they have starts, but not a lot of starts together. They're cobbling together guys who have been, like Josh Preeb, he started a lot of games in Northwestern. You know, you go out and You put together a guy like Giovanni Ohadi, started a lot of games at Michigan a couple of years ago. I mean, you got Hinton, Miles Hinton started a lot of games at Stanford. So you can piece a lot of starts, but the gelling of it is going to take some time. This is why I talk about runway for the season.
Mm-hmm.
They gotta get them together and let them live through some mistakes and hope that it happens fast enough so this running game can get them to a point where your quarterback can grow up. I think they're going to be fine because you can help tackles where I think is the biggest hole, and you got a running back that defenses have to account for, and I think that is going to be something that helps open up the running game.
We just had Washington coach Jed Fish up here, and he said that for hiring his defensive coordinator, who of course ended up being Steve Belichick, the starting point was I want to hire an NFL defensive coordinator, and some of the inspiration for that was talking with Jim Harbaugh. And Jim Harbaugh pointed to Mike McDonald, he pointed to Jesse Minter, and of course now Michigan is staying in that mold with an NFL defensive coordinator hire in Wink Martindale. Aside from the absolute game wreckers in the middle of that defensive line, what should we expect from Michigan's defense under new leadership?
Again, you're talking about it's the same tree. It's not just going to the NFL. Mm-hmm. You go to the guy that Mike McDonald and Jesse Minter learned from. They learned from Wink Martindale. So it's in essence his scheme. Now they put their own spin on it, and there's, I think, some fear and concern that maybe his aggression on the back end,
the blitzes,
is maybe a little out of character for this defense. What Wink will tell you is, listen, I played to the personnel that I had with the teams that I was on at Michigan. I mean, this secondary, the things that they do, I wasn't doing with my NFL guys. I mean, they can do more. And look at the defense, the line they have up front. The game records they have up front, maybe I don't have to blitz as much. So I can vary my approach. I can vary my attack. I'm not going to come in here and be Don Brown. So I think you're going to see a lot of the same with some spin. The biggest question for Michigan is not about approach. The biggest question for Michigan defensively is, will they have the depth that they had the past couple of years? That's the secret sauce. They could go 2-3 deep. Their first string, to me, if it's not the best in the country, it's arguably there. It's right up there. It's once you get to the second and third string, are they as good? That's what we have to wait to see.
Defensively on the front seven, could they be better than they were last year?
They could be.
Okay.
Wow.
They could be. Mason Graham and Kenneth Grant are the best defensive tackle tandem in Michigan history.
Yes.
Jayshon Barham bench pressed a first-round pick into the backfield in the Rose Bowl. Derek Moore is an outstanding defensive end on the other side, and Jayshon Barham I thought was a 5-star pickup in the portal, and they're gonna use him in different ways. He's not just gonna be at the second level. They're gonna bring him off the edge. He's gonna line up in the middle. He's gonna be a chess piece at the second level, and Will Johnson is an All-American. I mean, they have the tools to be better, which is crazy to say when you're losing a guy like Mike Sainristil, right? So that's another thing that gives them a little bit of leeway on offense. You got a defense that can give you a cushion. So can they grow that offense up fast enough is the question that is facing this team.
Going back to the offense, Donovan Edwards has gotten a lot of shine this offseason. He had a great performance in the title game. He's on the cover of the video game. But Blake Corum was the workhorse of this offense the last few years. Is Donovan going to be kind of stepping into that 30-carry-a-game role, or is there Kalel Mullings or somebody else going to be carrying the workload like that?
You're paying attention. You're paying attention. So Donovan, this has been a journey for him. He has God-given talent. We watched him on this field. I think I might have talked to Bud about it on Cover 3 a couple of years ago. I watched him make one of the most unbelievable runs ever. He's running a split zone going to this end zone. And this guy, he has 5 yards play side. It is wide open. It is clearly blocked. And he cuts back a split zone into 2 unblocked defenders and runs through 6 guys to the end zone. And I was like, what did you see? And he said, I saw a touchdown. It's impossible that you saw a touchdown doing that. And he said, so what did you see? He said, well, I'm going for touchdowns every time. Well, that's not what Blake Corum does, right? No. Blake Corum is taking the 5 yards and getting 50 when it's there. And so that was what Donovan wasn't doing. And it would get him in trouble sometimes. So last year, he's thinking, hey, man, this is going to be my year. But Blake comes back. And Donovan has an offseason where he's hurt heading into the season. So that sets him back. So you have all this adversity heading into the season. He's not living up to expectations. Blake is there. He's not getting all the carries he wants, and it's in his head. And so now he has to get right with, how do I find my place? And it wasn't until the end of the season where he got out of his own head, and then he started to think about, how can I best contribute to this team? And what he realized is, listen, let me start working within the framework of the play. And the textbook example of that was his first touchdown in the national championship game. It was an inside zone play. And if you remember, he runs into the back of his blocker. He's pressing the hell out of that A-gap. I'm going to press this A-gap if it kills me. So much that he runs into the back of his blocker. But what happens? He gets a touchdown out of it, right? So I think he has gotten to the point where he realizes, like, look, man, I'm going to take what the play gives me, and something special can come out of that because I got special talent. And you saw it in the spring game, and I think that's something that you'll see more and more as he gets into this season.
Getting that Pop Warner out of his game, so to speak.
Absolutely.
It took a minute. Sam, how much does the quarterback decision, is that related to what they have at receiver? Like, would you go with a better thrower if they had better receivers to throw to?
They're all 6 feet 180.
They went and got a Marion Walker back. I think to me the question was, did you go and get some guys on the perimeter that make defenses respect the speed down the field more than the size?
Sure.
Do teams think you have someone that can run by them? Because I don't think that Michigan had guys on the roster where they felt like teams would respect that. Marion Walker, Fred Moore, I think they feel like, I think you're going to see them throw up a couple times in the first game just to show that, right?
Play action over the top stuff.
To me, again, the question becomes, can you make the short and intermediate plays enough where teams respect it? Because I think Alex Orji, if you look back at what was really ailing them, they couldn't run the football early last year. That, to me, was the issue. Teams have figured out a way to shut down some of their staple run plays. Michigan couldn't get outside. Illinois had written the book. Teams like East Carolina was shutting them down. And they started putting reads on some of their base run plays, reads on counters, reads on duos, right? It was unbelievable. Now, all of a sudden, they can run the football. You put Alex Orji in that situation, eureka. Now you can really do some things. But he has got to be able to hit some short and intermediate play, just enough, not like J.J. McCarthy,
just to keep him honest.
To keep him honest. So he doesn't have to be J.J. McCarthy throwing the football. Just be consistent enough, because the other things in the run game that you can do can be difference making. So that's the key. Can he do the passing game consistently enough to make them respect you? And if you can, Michigan can't have an offense that can have them right there.
He is Sam Webb, the Michigan Insider, 24/7 Sports, one of the best in the business when it comes to covering the Wolverines.